back to my channel, everybody. I'm Susan Lynn. I'm a psychic and a medium. Thanks so much for tuning into this video. And I'm super excited to be sharing the screen with Karen Willis, who is an author, but she's also a quantum hypnosis healer. You're a past life therapist. You're a life between life. Would that be a therapist or a reader?
Yeah, therapist. Yeah.
I mean, so I'm super excited to have her here. And I'm also super excited to have her here because of this. Don't be scared by the size of the book. If you can't see it, it says the awakened memories of the soul, awakened memories of the soul, 24 past life memories with Jesus. Now, Jesus is an ascended master. He, in my opinion, I've told you guys all the time, he's a free agent. He doesn't just work for one religion or another religion. He works for humanity. And even though I was not raised in the church or I am not religious, Jesus has appeared to me as an ascended master to help me on my way. So Jesus can work with all of us. And specifically, he's come to Karen through this very unique chain of events that she's going to talk about right now. And she's also going to tell us a few things about what she's learned about Jesus and how he's trying to help us. Welcome, Karen. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Very cool. Can you tell me sort of how did you even get involved in this type of thing?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. And I tell people I didn't make this up. You can't make this story up. So I was in the 80s and I went to my local library because I had reserved a book. Well, when I got there, they gave me another book. And I said, that's not the book that I requested. She opened the book. And at that time, they write your name down, right? It had Karen Willis on it. And it was called Many Mansions with Gina Cervani. I can't pronounce her name. So I took the book and I started reading it. It was also talked about Edgar Cayce, who I study a lot now too. I'm really.
But at the time, were you interested in any of this type of thing?
No.
What kind of book were you going to get?
Well, I watched Phil Donahue. That's the age group I was with. And so I was a home mother. I had two little boys. And so I saw this program about a woman that had incest in her family. Now, that wasn't my experience, but she was such a strong person. And I realized that I needed to gain my strength back. Later on, I understood this, but, and that's why I was drawn to that book. So it was totally different. I mean,
totally different.
Incest with Jesus.
And so instead you get this book that has your name written in it, and the librarian is like, no, honey, this is for you. So you decide to take it home and you read it. And that is when
the door opened.
Things kind of opened up for you.
Oh, yeah. I call it the opening, the awakening, really. It started my journey. I mean, it's been progressing since then. But anyway, so because I reread it and it's like a primer to me now. It's real simple to me, but it's kind of interesting. So then I read it and I just said, this answers all the questions I've ever had. I always asked, I was a questioning child, okay, in the church. And so I would say, why would one person be born this way and another that way? If God is all love, that makes no sense. And they never could answer that question because they'd say, well, it's God's will. And I'm like, well, if God is all love, that still doesn't make sense. So it answered those questions. Also, it answered questions that we choose our parents. Because I had not great parents, okay? They were fine. I mean, it wasn't like terrible, but it wasn't great either. So I understood that I had to grow up as a soul and to take responsibility and not blame them and forgive them, right? Forgiveness is a very powerful thing. Everybody needs to forgive, believe me. So anyway, so I got all the books I could, and in the 80s there wasn't a lot. Ruth Montgomery, Jesse Stern. So there was a few of those, and of course Edgar Casey. So I just kept reading and reading and reading. And I wasn't a reader before that, but I was just reading everything I could get my hands on. So then I told my husband, I need to know if this is real. I can read all books in the world, but I really need to know. So it's interesting. My husband found this man on the radio, and his name is Carl. On the radio in Baltimore, and his name is Carl Splatterback. So I went to him, and I'm sitting there, and I have to remember when clients come because they're a little nervous, you know. So I'm thinking, what is going to happen and everything. So I went to my past lives, and it explained. And I'm like a visual person, so I see it like a movie. Some people don't. Some people see it like pictures, or some people just feel things or know things, okay, or all of them. So, and I couldn't change the movies, you know, it made sense in this life. And so I just thought so I wanted to share it with the world, okay, but they really weren't ready. So I got a lot of. Was
this still in the 80s, or was this in the 90s?
Yeah, in Maryland.
The late 80s?
I'm in Maryland, yeah. Near, and I'm in a small town too, so you know that's kind of. So so then I realized that I always felt I needed to help people. That was my mission. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought everybody wanted to have a job where they're helping, but I realized that's not true. And so, make a long story short, I worked for special needs kids. I got my degree and special education. I had to go back to school when my kids were little at night school and finish. And I taught for 15 years. And then Spirit, that's why I tell people, listen. And you talk about it all the time. You need to listen to that inner voice. It kept telling me, you need to leave or you're going to get cancer. It said that.
You need to leave what?
Leave my job.
Oh, shoot. Now, was this like a knowing, or did you hear it?
It's, it's hard to explain. It's a knowing, but it's also a hearing. Yes, I don't know how to explain that.
Well, it is clairaudience then. That does qualify as clairaudience. And then had you had other knowings, or had you heard other things at that point?
When I was a child, I was almost abused by a man. And I heard, get out now. And I ran. Yeah.
Okay. So but before that,
I just thought it was normal.
Yeah, I know. Well, we do, because, but after that, and before you got this knowing information that you needed to quit your job, what happened before that? Like, were you having dreams, or were you doing, what kind of awakening experience did you have at that point?
Well, I thought it was my purpose, to work with handicapped kids.
Okay.
And I felt guilty leaving, so I was torn. Because I love the kids, it's all the other crazy stuff. But anyway, I'm not going into that. So, and I went to a psychic, and she told me, your purpose can change. And it kind of freed me. And I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense.
So now you're at a place where you're like, this is real, but you're still doing your thing. And you're thinking, my goal, my soul path is to help these children. So you were like, everything's hunky dory. I've got this figured out. You thought, I'm doing my thing. And then out of the blue, they're like, you got to go, right?
Yeah.
You need to leave, or specifically even.
Yeah. And I didn't know what I was going to do at that point,
Wow.
And so everybody said, you're so talented with stained glass. So I did stained glass for like 2 years. And then something was again telling me, you need to move on, you need to move on. And then I had a spiritual group at that time. And what kept coming is, you're supposed to be doing past life work. You're supposed to be doing this. And it's just like a gnawing feeling that won't go away.
Yes.
Do you understand that? Okay.
Oh, do I ever?
So I told my group, and they go, yeah, this is all you talk about. This is, this helped you, and this helped you move away from, some things that, were no longer serving you. So I said, okay. So I just surrendered, basically. I think that's what we need to do.
Perfect.
Okay. Because I said, if I'm not supposed to do this, it's not going to work. Right.
Right.
So I found my first teacher, Henry Bolduc, who is a saint, basically. I think he was a disciple, one of the main disciples.
What's his first name? What's his name again?
Henry Bolduc.
Henry Bolduc. Okay. And tell me what he taught you.
Well, I went for training, and I love the training in past life because he had another therapist with us in training. And so, I'll tell you a story that I called another therapist first, and they said, call back. Then I called him, and he answered the phone. And I said, this is my teacher. I knew it immediately. And so anyway, that's where my first experience that I had an experience, a past life with Jesus in training.
What?
Yes. That was what was very strange because there was a girl training to be a therapist and I was the client. Okay. Plus we had a trained therapist with us. Okay. So we're in the room. And so I'm this shepherd boy. I see myself as a shepherd boy. And then I felt that this friend of mine kept telling me, you have to see this man. You have to see this man. But I had responsibilities at home. My father was bedridden and I took care of sheep and things like that. But anyway, so I went to see him and it was just like amazing. I mean, he was so charismatic and he made sense. And I wanted to see more and more. And it's a long story, but anyway, you have to read the book because I don't want to go into everything. But I felt tremendous guilt because I couldn't help him at the end. So, and the therapist at that time, and I've learned from him, he said, if Jesus was here, what would he say? And immediately it lifted. It lifted. And that's why I'm talking about forgiveness of self or others. It's a heavy, heavy weight that we carry from lifetimes. Look at how long I carried that.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, then the interesting thing is the spirit works in mysterious ways. so anyway, you doubt that, really, I mean, who am I to have a lifetime with Jesus? I mean, really, because I was a follower. I ended up following. Okay. I wasn't a disciple. I was a shepherd boy, young boy. Asked the therapist if I could have another session. And he said, sure, you can have another session. I said, can we go to that lifetime of Jesus, because I need to know if that was real or not. And he said, I can't guarantee it. You can't guarantee where your higher self takes you. Okay. So, and in the meantime, another woman came down she was in training too, came down the hall and asked if she could come in my session. And I'm like, sure, come on in. So I don't allow that to happen, but back then I didn't know any better. I found out a little more information that I was a follower and all that kind of thing. But the interesting thing was, nearing the end of the session, the therapist's stomach was like growling, like very, very loudly. I mean, extremely loud. And at the time, I did not know what the subconscious is, which we'll talk about. That's the higher self. That's the wisest part of us, the connection to source, whatever. And so I had no control what was coming out of my mouth, basically. That's when you know you're there. And what came out was, your stomach is responding to the truth. Yes. And I don't talk like that.
Yeah.
That's not my language. So at first, and then my conscious mind came in and kind of laughed. And then the subconscious came through and basically, said, this is the truth. So, but I didn't know at the time what that was. But it's like you have no control. Have you had that before? Okay.
I've channeled where I've Giving up my faculties, so to speak.
Okay. So anyway, I believed it after that. I mean, because that was just like a sign. I mean, really, then I went through training, and then I did past life with my friends at first. They were open, some of them. And then I started doing it professionally, basically. And I went to a acupuncturist, and I was in her group for a while. And then I was told to go into my home. So I work at the home now, because they said it doesn't matter where you are, they'll come. So when I went to the higher self, because I was wondering if people would take you seriously if you work at home. They said it doesn't matter. They'll come. Then I did training with Dolores Cannon on the quantum healing hypnosis, where you go to the higher self. And that's in the book too, where some of the people are in their subconscious, and they give more information about Yahshua, Jesus. And so it was, before that I do between life training too. I forgot in between there. So with Marjorie Reynolds, who was trained with Michael Newton. So
right. And if you guys know me, I love Michael Newton. I'm constantly telling you guys to read Journey of Souls. And what she's talking about is the life between lives. Okay. So in between your incarnations, you're planning your next incarnation with your soul group or whoever you want to involve in that. So you actually got like certified or trained in that type of work?
Trained.
And that's different than past lives for some reason?
Well, no, I go to 2 past lives. Some people just go to 1. I go to 2 past lives, but the second life is your most recent life, because you're going from there to in between the lives, this life and your most recent past life. Does that make sense? Okay. So then I ask you, and then you go before your counsel. And actually, one of the clients in the book, she went into that with her counsel, and they told her about a lifetime with Jesus and things like that. So you can get as much information there too with your counsel.
Can you tell me about the council? Tell me about that. What is the council?
The council is a group of highly evolved spiritual beings. I saw them, it was kind of funny, as the Wizard of Oz kind of Glinda the Good Witch.
Wait, you saw them all as the characters in the Wizard of Oz?
No, I saw her and then the Tin Man, but I didn't see anybody else. Then I saw an Egyptian and an American Indian type person, and there was somebody else there. I don't know. There was a few, I can't remember. But anyway, what was interesting is they laughed at me because they have a sense of humor. And they said, we know you like visuals, but we're all energy. And then they went into energy, beautiful energy. And that's all we are. Yeah.
So who are they to you? Are they your, you have your own counsel? I have my own counsel? Or
I'm not real sure about that. I think it can change. I think as you evolve spiritually, maybe it can change.
Okay.
I'm not sure of that. I haven't gotten a direct answer about that one, so I can't say for sure. But that's my feeling. What's your feeling? Your feeling.
And would you have a feeling about whether your counsel is your spirit guides?
No, because the spirit guides can look on. They can be there with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes they help clients get to there. Like if they have difficulty going, I'll say, well, ask your client to help you go to the council or whatever. So that'll lead them there or wherever in the spirit world they want to go. So in the spirit world, you can go anywhere. There's places of learning. I've had people that have seen Einstein, and also Jesus and Buddha, you name
anybody.
Whatever school you want to go to.
It's the spiritual mall, the Mall of America, the Mall of Spiritual Americas. I had a little experience with my counsel. It wasn't so good because I was getting in trouble with some aliens. And they after they told me that I was doing this, I was choosing to do this. And I said, I'm not choosing to do this. And then they showed me a movie in my head. And I said, oh, Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like sliding down. I'm like, yeah. And then they said, "You're a healer," like that. They just shouted at me, "You're a healer." And then they sped off this big, long thing of numbers. And they said, "Go over there." So I did. Like, okay, I don't know what any of that means, but
Yeah.
obviously was outside of bounds for a minute, which is typical for me. So,
Mhm.
so you study with Dolores Cannon. If you guys listen, if some of my viewers, some of the people watching this video don't know who Dolores Cannon is, please go find out, because she wrote so many books that are going to be they're like sacred texts. The guides are saying these books are like sacred texts. It's information handed down to her through channelings, and it's invaluable information. It's a little dense, some of it. She did a lot of videos. You can find her on YouTube and whatnot as well. And she developed, right, this particular modality that we're talking about with the quantum healing hypnosis. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's what she called it. So that's what I call it. Yeah.
And there's a little bit different version. So the way she got it downloaded and she created it, it needs to be done in person. And that's what you do. And now it seems like some of her followers or students have sort of created a little bit different version that they feel can be done like on Zoom or something. But I don't know that Dolores, while she was walking the earth, ever approved of that.
No, she didn't.
Yeah.
No.
And
So that's
I'm not
why,
saying one way or the other.
yeah,
I'm
I'm
just
not
trying
either.
to
And
clarify.
I'm not judging anybody, but
Yeah. I'm just trying to clarify that there's two different things here.
Right.
And you met Dolores. You met her and studied with her twice.
And the interesting thing is that I was telling her about Henry Baldick, and she said, yes. She says, he told me to start teaching this. Now look at synchronicity, right?
Synchronicities.
Yeah. And then she said, he died. And I said, no, he's still living. Well, I think it was like 6 months later, he passed away. So she was picking that up. Yeah.
He was living in the future, probably. Wow. So
But
that is fascinating. Okay.
yes. So that's interesting, I thought. So there's been synchronicity throughout my life, basically. If you're aware of it, you know it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, you see it. Once you're aware of it, I think it's easier to see it, right?
Yeah.
So you started doing the work. You started doing these in between life readings, past life readings, and doing the quantum healing hypnosis, right? Where in that part is where you put the client in a hypnosis, and you can talk to their superconscious or their.
Yeah, like I said before to you, Edgar Casey called it the super subconscious. And we were talking about levels before, but there are the way humans understand it. I'm sorry, they don't like me to say levels, but there's levels of awareness. Like some people are in kindergarten, some are not, or some are in college, and some are in high school, whatever. I'm talking spiritual knowledge, wisdom.
I'm in remedial.
Whatever.
I'm in remedial.
No, I don't think so. No, but anyway,
I promise you, I am.
So
it's okay.
Anyway,
it's really good people. We're really highly
involved. What level you're on. Now, Edgar Casey was on the super subconscious level. I mean, he could go into hypnosis by himself. So, but I take people to two past lives before they go into that, because they have to be deep enough to go in.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. And I usually recommend past life first if they're kind of new on their journey, because it's really an intensive session, 4 to 5 hours.
The quantum healing hypnosis is 4 to 5 hours, but past life reading can be in an hour or
no. It's probably an hour and a half to 2.
Really?
Mostly when I do it, I don't stop it. I've heard people tell me that therapists have stopped it, which I was like, no.
I've experienced that.
I only do 1 a day. And I've learned that I cannot do more than 3 a week. And I tell healers that they need to be careful too, because Edgar Casey died because he was doing too much. Remember?
I know, you burn your circuits out, basically. Yeah. So let me understand, because I've had past life reading where it was basically like an hour. So let me understand what the difference is. Like, what do you think you're saying they stopped it? I don't understand what that means.
Well, he said that they only had a certain time because they had somebody else come.
Yes.
It's like an appointment. And I'm like,
how many of these past lives can we stuff in an hour? Let's see. Yeah. Hurry up, Susan. You've got another one as a cowgirl. Come on. Oh God.
And this was kind of a famous person I can't mention, but
please don't.
No.
So I want to also say something that happened to me. Because I talk to my clients a lot about this because for me, I want to help people with more than just knowledge. Like I can tell you, don't take the job, right? Like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say why. And then I want to say what might be better, or, you know what I mean? Like I want to finish it. So my past life and others that I've known, you get the data. Like I got data that was really important because I can see the pattern happening in my life now. And in this past life, believe it or not, I was an alien. And the same pattern then is evident in my human life. And it just, my little Virgo self, it's like, please let me fix this. But they just gave me the data and I was left with this situation that I didn't know how to fix. And I'm kind of fixing it myself. It's kind of really not very pretty how I'm fixing it, but I don't know how to go about it. So with your situation, the way you do it is different, I would assume, or?
Yes. The way I was trained, which thank goodness I was, and most recent past life therapists, because in the 80s, he didn't finish it either. Okay. And I think that's how they did it back then. I'm not sure. And I bless him because he started my journey, and I did work out stuff because I had drowned 3 times. So I had terrible fear of water. So I had worked that out within myself, and public speaking took a little longer. So I'm amazed that I can do this now, basically, because I used to have anxiety about that. So what I found out, and some people even today came to me and told me something was unfinished. What I do after the past life, okay, you have the past life experience, okay? I ask specific questions to get to the crux of why you went to that lifetime, okay?
Thank you.
You can experience anything, but why are you there?
Why that one?
So when I feel that it's done, I'll say, all right, it's time for the soul to be released from the body. What is happening? What are you sensing or feeling? Okay. So usually they feel a lifting. Okay. Okay. Or is there anybody that helps you to go?
This is death.
Like
you're saying you help them finish it by you help them. You're at their death process, correct?
Oh, you have to go through the death process.
I'm just being specific. I'm trying to make this plain English.
Yeah, that's important. Okay. And they don't feel any pain because I'll say, look in the observant position or whatever, feeling no pain.
One of mine. I did finish one of them. Okay, go ahead.
And then I asked them to go to the life review.
Oh,
mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
So in the life review, that is where you release anything that you brought with you from that lifetime, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever, forgiveness. Because if it's not finished, then sometimes you don't know how to finish it yourself, right?
I didn't.
Right. So to me, that's really, really important. So that you do that in a past life. Now, I also do that in when I have lifetimes in the subconscious, because sometimes people don't go into the subconscious. Either they're too analytical, or they're trying too hard. They go like that. Squidge too.
You're talking to my people. Go ahead.
Or they're not ready for it. Okay. So I always finish it because I don't want anything unfinished. So, but I'll ask the subconscious if they go there, is everything complete? And usually it is. So, because I kind of make sure that everything's complete. So that's why you had difficulties, and I've had a couple of clients say that they didn't release. So we'll go back to that lifetime and release it. Okay.
So when you had your 3 lives that you experienced drowning, how did you finally release that? Were you able to release that in one session, or is that something that takes multiple sessions?
That took time because he didn't go into the life review. Yeah.
But if you went into the life review, could you release something that traumatic over multiple lifetimes in one session? If the client was ready, I guess is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
If the client is ready to release it, the client will release it. If the client's not ready to release it, then the client has to be ready to release it.
You can't make anybody do anything.
Right.
I had a client that could not forgive someone that murdered them. Okay. And so I tried all my ways, with Jesus and everything. She says, no, I'm not, no, I'm not ready. But most people are ready to release, because I tell them it will set you free. I tell them to release the soul of that person, not the deed. See, that's where they get confused. You're releasing the essence of their soul. Okay? Because everyone has a light. Some are dimmer than others, right? Yeah. And we put ourselves in that position, right? We chose
be murdered?
It. Yeah. Or the murderer. I've had murderers.
I know.
I've had Nazis. I've had.
One of my lifetimes, I called myself a monster in my because I was some kind of queen. It's a long story, but the castle thing got attacked. The guy that came in killed my family and killed my son in front of me in a very vicious way, a very slow death. And so, I hated that guy, and I didn't want to love anybody. I didn't want to love my next set of kids that he gave me. I didn't want to love anything. Right. So that fear of love kind of came forward in my life. But in that life, I was some kind of bad, mean woman that you wouldn't want to meet. And so, that helped my soul experience that, right? Our soul wants to experience it all, honestly, all of it. They don't
that's why we can't judge, because we don't know what a lot of people don't know what they've done in past lives,
That's what I'm saying.
And sometimes we come as a murderer. It's hard to say this, I know, for a reason. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I do understand.
And it's hard for people to understand. Have you ever read the book, The Little Soul in the Sun by Neil Donald Walsh? You need to watch. It's about a little soul that wants to learn forgiveness. So his friend comes and chooses to be really nasty and mean and cruel, and he learns forgiveness. So sometimes souls will come in really nasty, but that's the way we would learn, right?
It's not unlike a Shakespeare play. Everybody's playing their role. Right. And when you read these books like Journey of Souls, and you read your book, you understand a little bit better how and honestly, people that have had near-death experiences. People that have had near-death experiences, you can learn so much from them, because they cross over, they learn what it is they're doing, why they're coming back, why they're not, it's so informative, and you can really learn so much that way.
And it's all about loving one another and yourself as well. And that's what Yeshua, Jesus, was talking about in the book a lot. It's all about loving and oneness. So, and forgiveness. Forgiveness is a big thing because, we're all one. So if you don't forgive, then, you're going to carry that with you, and you don't want to do that. Right.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question about forgiveness, because I read this book. I read 400 pages. Don't be upset. The type is really big. The type is really big. So it's not that big a book.
I did that because it's hard to read I've seen books like that, and it's really hard to read.
Dolores Cannon.
The client.
Dolores Cannon's books. I open it up and there's 1,000 words on one page. I'm like, oh boy. And I'm a reader, right? It's very dense information. But let me just say this about this book. These are channeled. So what you're reading in this book is excerpts from actual channeled, her clients channeling exactly what they're saying as they're experiencing their life with Jesus. And she's asking questions. It's literally a book of, they say, Jesus says this, or I saw this, or I experienced this. So it's almost like first person. You're first person in Jesus's time. But something I want to bring up, because I think I had this hang up. I'm cracking myself up with Jesus, because as a child, I didn't grow up in a religious household at all. I didn't own a Bible. I didn't go to Bible vacation in the South. Everybody sends their kids to Bible vacation schools, a way to get rid of their kids in the summer. I didn't do any of that. And so I'm pretty blank about all of this. Right. And when I was like, I would say just having one of my first awakenings, I got this impression of Jesus, and I got this impression of forgiveness. And I had a really hard time forgiving people, right? Like I had a really rough childhood, and I was like, basically by the time I survived it, I was like, screw you, I'm out, right? So I was confused. I was like, I don't understand how, and I became a warrior sort of, because I had to be a survivalist, right? So I didn't understand how you could forgive people, right? Like, what's the point of forgiving people if they're going to knock you down over and over and over again? And how does forgiveness become a doormat, right? Like the unhealthy forgiveness, the addiction to trying to get that person to love you when they're not going to love you and you're just a doormat. That is different than what Jesus is saying. Because I read it in your book and I said, this sentence cleared up everything for me. Because I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I know I marked it, but I didn't get a chance to underline it. But he said, basically, I forgive them, but I don't have to hang around them. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, I'm not going to subject myself to their hate or to their anger or violence. I'm not going to subject myself to that, but I do forgive them. So that was what clicked for me. Like, I can forgive certain political leaders. I don't have to subject myself to them. I don't have to not want them to be held to account to our society's roles or laws, but I can forgive them. So that really cleared it up for me.
Yeah. And forgiveness will set you free. Because it's like in the book, I tell people when I do forgiveness, I imagine them in a prison or a corral, whatever, and look in there and see who's in there. And usually it's them and somebody else. And when you're ready to forgive, and let go, of course, I say some other things, and the gates will automatically open and everyone walks out free. So they feel that freedom once you are free of it, because it's a heavy burden that you carry with you. And like I said, when I tell people to forgive the soul, that makes more sense to them. You don't have to forget the deed. That's not right. Or you don't have to hang with them, like you said.
Right.
You can't, Jesus didn't want us to be a doormat. No.
But that's kind of the impression that I got, right? Like, even though I didn't grow up in religion, I grew up in a Catholic neighborhood and all my friends are Catholic, and I spent time at the Catholic church in the sense of they would show movies in the summer and what. So that was kind of like the impression that I got, right? Was that you should just be supplicate. You should supplicate yourself or something like that. Which is, as you talk about in your book, this, or as you can discern by reading everybody's first hand account of their interactions with Jesus, one of the things I think that he was doing was trying to help these priests, these temple people, understand that they kind of were, changing God's words or changing the narrative to maybe fit their own power. And I think maybe that's where he kind of got into trouble. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And in my experience, and I can't make it up, he did overturn the tables. He did.
Yes.
It was different than the Bible, because I felt we were protecting him. And it was very clear because we were afraid for him, and he was upset. I mean, Jesus was human. Okay. He was upset. that the money exchangers and stuff. So we gathered around him and kind of just let him come out, of it. And it was kind of, there was a lot of commotion and people screaming and stuff. That's another thing. You can't make any of these stories up because they are telling stories that aren't in the Bible a lot of times. Now, some of it is, but some of the Bible is true, not all of it. And when someone actually channeled Yeshua, he said that not every book is 100%,
Right.
and the Bible is not always right either. It's been written and changed, just like, we know. Yeah.
And so what I want you to understand too is, because this woman is a critical thinker, she's not going to just believe stuff because, whatever. How many? 24 people, she took them to their life with Jesus and asked them similar questions. These 24 people didn't know each other.
Yep.
Okay. And you can see overlap in their answers. So she's got that's statistically significant. Okay. And sometimes their account is slightly different, but similar, and in other times, like how many times do people in the book, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I think maybe of 24, maybe 5 of them at least say that Jesus had 5 kids or 5 stars. One person said he had 5 stars, and it made me understand that maybe 1 or 2 were human. I don't know if that meant 5 didn't make it. Also, there's this sense that they, like you said, you were worried about him all throughout all of these people's channelings, because you're putting them in their, in that time. You're regressing them. They're literally there in that time, and they're all worried. Go ahead.
What I want to tell you is, I don't tell them to go to the lifetime with Jesus.
Oh, right. That's another synchronicity.
Okay. And they're not doing the really channeling. They're going to a past life and experience it. I do have channeling. That's a little different. That's where you go to the higher self. So these people don't know. A lot of people don't even know. Now, there was one woman who was Mary Magdalene. That's another story. Spirit told me again, because I think sometimes we can, since we're all one, we can go to lifetimes and access other people's lifetimes if we need. So I asked the higher self if all of these were true. And they said, yeah, they actually did have lifetimes. So I made sure of that first. But Mary Magdalene said she loved to dance. Well, 5 years before that, another woman said she loved to dance with Mary Magdalene. That's not in the Bible. So that was confirmation that she wasn't in the collective. She was and she was very spiritually and evolved. So they go to where I just say, what's happening? What are you sensing or feeling? And sometimes they go to the desert. I have people go to the desert, but they weren't with Jesus, right? Yeah. So I don't know where they're going, and they don't either. Okay. It's just like me. I was watching my sheep. I thought that was, and then it developed into Jesus. I mean, so it was like, this is strange. And what was interesting, I started work in 2006 after training, and in 2008, my first person came. And then a few years later, another person came, and I thought, that's very interesting, But then they started coming. A lot.
One after another. They would the life that they would show up would be with Jesus.
Yeah. And so I was like, this is very rare that a therapist has this many people with a lifetime with Jesus. I might have 4 or 5 people who were in Gettysburg, okay? But they didn't know each other. And they had different, experiences.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's extremely rare. Now, Dolores Cannon wrote about, I think she wrote Jesus and the Essenes, and she wrote another book.
Yes.
And it was so interesting. After my experience with Jesus, I'd read it, but I didn't realize what she did until another person told me about her. So, synchronicity again. So, and she didn't have that. I think there was like three, maybe something like that. But I actually had more people, but I didn't put everybody in. Do you see what I'm saying? So, and another interesting thing, after the book is done, I haven't had anybody come with Lifetimes with Jesus.
And how long has the book been out?
It's going on a year and a half now.
So in a year and a half, you haven't had anybody. Like, mission completed. And didn't he come through and give you a message through one of the people that you had regressed? Didn't he come through?
Well, I don't think it was him. It was this woman was we had talked before, and I said, I think I'm supposed to write this book, but I didn't take it seriously. I maybe had 10 people at that time, something like that, which was a lot. And so I'm like, I think I'm supposed to, but you just kind of like put it out because I never thought I'd write a book, believe me. So anyway, so she went to the collective. She was in the quantum healing part, where you go, but she went really deep, or we call it deep, but it's not really deep. You're going inward. Okay. So Yashua said that you always say you're going higher, but you're going within. So she started speaking in this ancient language in a deep, deep male voice.
Wow.
And I've had people speak in different languages. So I always say, could you please interpret? And she told me that this book is very important. You need to write it. You need to tell the truth. So that's why I included the channeling too, because I felt I needed to tell it all, right? So she kept saying, you need to tell the truth. Then she would go back in the language, and she actually said, this is your destiny. And it blew me away. I was like, oh my goodness. It was a lot. Okay.
And didn't you get a message about how it was going to take longer than you wanted it to?
Yeah. Yeah. Some people in there, they would say it's going to take a lot longer than you think. Or they would tell me more is coming. I'm like, more is coming? How many more? And so another interesting thing is I've always told people after, when I started writing the book, it'd be interesting to have a Roman soldier and his perspective. Guess who came?
Man, I'm not there yet. Are you going to spoil it? Go ahead.
No, I won't tell you about it.
No, go ahead. I'm literally like this. I'm at the very end of the book, but that's okay. I can handle it. Go ahead.
You can handle it.
I would love to know what the Roman soldiers' viewpoint was. Are you saying to me it was a Roman soldier in the crucifixion kind of area?
He was the one that set it in motion.
For real.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this present life, this person is a female or male?
Female. I was like blown away because I always say, wouldn't it be interesting? And because the book was going to be edited, and then she came, and I'm like, well, I got to put this in. I mean, really, it's like, because she didn't really know Jesus like the others did, but it still had an impact on everything pretty much. So she was basically, it was her job to protect, the emperor. And so she saw that he was getting all this attention and, might affect her boss, that kind of thing.
My God.
And so, but what is interesting is when it was unfolding and the crucifixion was happening, he said he was having trouble with it. So do you see, it was like he was torn. I shouldn't have done this, but I don't know why. And it was, you have to read, it's just like he went through this turmoil of it. And I've had people do that. They're in such turmoil. And at first he wouldn't tell me. First he said there was a hanging or whatever. And I had to dig until he said, oh, they're being crucified, There's somebody being crucified, and I'm like, well, who? And then I found out.
You think when that part of the conscious won't be honest, does that mean it's not very deep? does that reflect the inner turmoil of the consciousness that doesn't like what they did, and so they're trying to kind of hedge it? Well, it was
Yeah,
a hanging.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. That's
like me
happened
with the alien
before.
ship. Okay.
Yeah, that happened before with a man that he said, in fact, I think he came back in the same family because he said his family always talked about somebody being in the family being murdered in the Holocaust, well, they were killed in their house, I guess. But anyway, so evidently he thought he was that girl in that life, and then he realized he was the Nazi that killed her. Do you see what I'm saying? So sometimes it's so hard for a soul to recognize that they did something horrible,
And so you're going to have to just stay right there for just a minute. So then after this human person has this realization while under hypnosis that I see this little girl, oops, I'm the person who killed the little girl. Then how do you fix that? I mean, how do you make that all better?
Well,
Hopefully.
you have to forgive yourself.
How do you assist them to do that?
And I tell them that was in the past. It no longer should affect you. I mean, that was a lifetime. You made a contract, right? We make contracts. Yeah. Okay, you made a contract with that little girl.
Can you find out through something that you do, since you do so many different things, can you find out why you made the contract? Why, as a soul, did I want to come down as a Nazi?
I can't remember what he said, so I'd have to look that up.
But you can find that out. That is something that is
if
available.
They'll tell you, yeah, if they're at that higher level. Sometimes it doesn't come out in the life review, because I think what happens when I do the life review, they don't always go to the council. I think it's the first time. It's like people say, my life went before me real fast or whatever. So I've had people go to the council, though. And some people, it's really interesting, never read any books, and they go to the council. So they can't make that out either.
No, yeah. You can't make any of this up, for real. Like, seriously.
So, so anyway, so
I want to know okay. So you feel like this is your destiny. I mean, you've been told this is your destiny. This is the problem, I think, for me, when they tell me things and it's such a shock, and I can't feel it in my body. Like, you can tell me I'm 7 foot tall. I'm not going to believe you. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of like that disconnect thing. So for you did it. You birthed this thing. It's almost 10 pounds. No, you birthed this thing. And the reason that it's supposed to be out is because the main message?
The main message to me is that Jesus was a great teacher. Okay. He's an ascended master now, whatever. But there were other teachers as well that are not as well known. He says that Mary Magdalene and Mary, his mother, were also healers. There were also healers. So a lot of what the Bible says, it leaves a lot out.
Yeah.
Jesus went traveling. He went to Tibet. He studied Buddhism, and he went other places too, because Joseph Arimathea is in there, and he took him, and he was very protective of Jesus, very protective of the whole family.
So Joseph is Jesus's uncle,
right?
And I only know this because I read this book. So one of the people in their regression, they were Jesus's uncle, and Jesus's uncle was a sailor, a ship merchant, and he would take Jesus, wherever they went I think they went to the Orient. Did they go to the Orient? Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I can't remember. He went to maybe China. I can't remember.
I feel like
India. I remember India and
Nepal, India, faraway lands. And he was gone for a year at a time, or the slow travel, right? Yeah, and you were saying his uncle was very protective, but from what I can understand, everybody was very protective. There was always a sense with every one that I read, whether they were a shepherd, whether they were just a kid in a village that met Jesus, whoever they were, that there was a sense of being afraid for Jesus, wanting to
Yeah.
protect him. And that is also why I read in this book why Mary, his wife, and that's another thing. A lot of people say they were married, but I think the idea of marriage was very different then. But she sort of kind of stayed just a little bit away from him because of the safety. And I think that his kids were raised other places because there's no mention of his kids being anywhere. So I think they posited his kids different places for safety. There was always this idea of something can happen.
Yeah. So a lot of it, and also two people said Jesus didn't really die on the cross. There was an appearance of death. Yeah. And that he ended up in France with Mary. And I don't know, to me, it doesn't matter. It matters what he said when he was doing his teachings and talked about we need to remember our oneness and who we are. And that we forgot who we were, and he came in a time of turmoil to show peace, and so people had different agendas with him as well. They wanted him to destroy the Romans, and that's not why he came. Right?
No. And he said something like, I came because of the darkness. Well, where is he now? You know what I mean? Like, how much darker could it have been? Like, it really kind of tripped me out. I was like, wow. And I think also I just read that somebody was saying that he would be back, but it is not known when. I don't know.
I don't know if I asked that question. I don't remember. I'm not sure. I hope he does, but people won't recognize him.
No,
probably
we
just
won't.
Like before.
We're all Jesus. Jesus is in all of us. God is in all of us, right? We're all fragments.
Well, I think this is the beginning of the Great Awakening. I mean, we got a ways to go. It probably won't be in my lifetime. Sorry. But that's what I was told. But yeah, so.
Well, what is the Great Awakening? Define that.
Okay. When I first started doing this work, I maybe got one mail a year.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I really do.
Now I'm getting more men. Yep. I was on a radio station in Baltimore, and the more men started coming. So that was like, there are spiritual men out there. I mean, highly spiritual, evolved men. And I got more clients too. I mean, of course, some more well-known, but still, back in the 80s, it was a little slow, but then people started coming. So I think it was gradual. And then you talk to people, because I tell people what I do. I have learned that I just tell everybody what I do. I don't care anymore. I see the healing going on. That's the main reason why I do this work. It's about healing. It's not important who you were. It's what you brought with you and what you need to let go to live this life, because this is the one you're focused on. I know that there's no time, but we can't really understand that.
Exactly.
It's hard for a human brain. Yeah. And so, and also when she was channeling Yeshua, he said about the contracts, it's very hard for us to understand that human mind. So, and they'll tell you, or the word God. I had a client, actually, he was on the radio station thing, and they thought it was very strange. And they said to me, you know what he said? And when he said, you humans. And I said,
I say that all the time. I say that all the time. Yeah.
And so he said, because I asked the question, what do we call God? And he said, there is no name for God.
There's no name.
And no name. And he said, you humans,
Yeah. That's how you know you're not yourself, right? You're talking about humans in the third person.
Yeah. So So anyway, yeah. And they won't tell us certain information if we're not ready for it. And the same with the client. And that happened with me because after I had my 2 past lives in the 80s with Jesus, when I did the subconscious, that lifetime would come through. And I was kind of bored, I already saw this.
I already saw this movie 3 times.
Why are you showing me? Well, I was a healer, but I wouldn't have accepted it back in the 80s. Do you understand?
Oh yeah, sure. I totally understand. If you told me, I would, and for you too, right? Like if even like writing a book, right? Like me, if you told me I was on YouTube, I would say no. And then I would block it. Then I would go into resistance. So they'd rather us not know than have to fight through our very conscious resistance of it.
That's why you need to surrender. I think that's an important thing. And
that's true.
And that's kind of what I did. And I surrendered to the book. I said, if it reaches people, I hope it does. I'm not here to make a lot of money, believe me. And so I just want people to, to share it, because the people are wonderful. The souls that, they're amazing souls that were able to give us that information. And I tell people, you can read the book, but when I was with them, the energy in the room was different. And I don't see auras, but I saw auras around certain ones. Yeah. Wow. See, I'm getting chills. That's my
yes.
Yeah. So and then to listen to that inner voice. I think that's what he wants us to do too through the book. And not to judge yourself, or judge anyone else. That's not what he wants. And I tell people, you don't have to believe in past lives to be a spiritual person, but I think it does help to understand.
Once you get a past life regression and you see the same pattern, literally the same pattern happening to you in the Wild West or in England in 1800 or on a spaceship, and it's literally like you can pick it up and put it in your current life. It is very humbling. It's so illuminating as well. You realize, wow. And for me, it's also like what you said earlier, this is the life. This is the place that you want to do the work,
Right.
And so when you see those patterns kind of happening in this current life, you understand that you carried them from and maybe even those phobias or those fears,
right.
or those biases. So it becomes a little bit more of a responsibility that you want to work through it in this life. You don't want to really carry it or let it encumber the next life,
And I asked them, I said, because in between lives, and Michael Newton talks about that, there's a cleansing of the soul. Have you heard that? So I asked them, well, if we have that cleansing, why do we carry all this other stuff? It's up to the soul. So evidently the soul doesn't release everything, right?
Joshua said that in this book. I swear that was part of the contracts. That's what he said. He said it's really the soul's choice to repeat, to keep the energy and repeat the energy. And I don't really understand that either. Like, I don't understand this whole self-worth thing. Why, and that's very prominent in this book too, right? And it's very prominent with you, very prominent with me. You're supposed to be a healer, but you didn't have the self-worth to do that.
Well, that's what we have to work on and understand that we're all worthy. We're all light beings, in a human body, basically. This is just our dressing, our costume. We're all actors in a play. We're the directors, the producers. We choose it, and that's hard for people that come with really traumatic childhoods or lifetimes, because I've heard a lot of tragedy. I'm sure you have too. And so, but I say, it's like my mother really wasn't a mother. So what did I learn from her? Well, she was a great teacher. She taught me independence because I couldn't count on her. She taught me forgiveness. She taught me to have compassion for her.
Wow.
So do you see what I'm saying? So, and maybe
yeah.
some other things, but I think that's the main things that I learned. And I had a sister that taught me the same kind of thing. I mean, sometimes you get them in your family more than one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, so you have to let that go because you did choose them, and you otherwise it makes no sense. Why would somebody have a wonderful childhood and some people would just have a lot of tragedy? So I tell people that have a lot of issues going on, you're a brave soul because you wanted to learn
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand, when we're in the spirit world, we're so much wiser.
Oh, yes.
And we say, we can do this, right?
Yeah.
And you come down here and you're going, no,
Yeah.
what,
Well, we
what's going
forgot
on?
how to do it is the problem.
Yeah.
You know, so what would you say? What do you think? This is a hard question. I don't know, but because I really feel like you wrote this book, you have a pretty good feeling or understanding of Yeshua or Jesus's mentality or what his mission. So here we are in 2023, and we have a lot of distress and hate and judgment and violence. And how what's the best way for us? What would Jesus say to us in dealing with this?
Well, I wrote this down because I want to say it exactly what he said.
Oh,
I've told you, remember the virus?
oh yeah. That was, but we talked about that in an email like a month ago. That could
Yeah.
have been a whole nother
Okay.
lifetime.
This was channeled way before the virus, the COVID. Okay. When I asked him why there was so much turmoil in the world, because it was then too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is one thought, an erroneous thought that gets picked up like a virus by the thoughts of others, which is really one. It is held on to for a while until it is let go. The best thing anyone can do is remember oneness. Take the focus off the virus. Take the focus of what is not wanted entirely and focus on the unity and oneness with the Creator and the joy and harmony of that. And that will change everything. And I think you've been saying that too, that we need to take our focus off of Trump and what's going on with all the crazies and everything, and concentrate that we're all one, and just see them as souls that are kind of like lost their way in some ways, right? Because it's not what Jesus taught at all. Compassion, he taught forgiveness, compassion, love for one another. So they're farther away, but just send them love. That's all you can do. They might not change, but they might. You never know. It's like people who come to me and tell me that I'm a witch, or
Yeah. The devil. Yeah.
or I'm going to hell.
Yeah.
Because I just say bless you and just walk away. Because
Yeah.
you can't change somebody's mind about that.
And that's what Jesus did, right? That's what he said. He said, I leave them alone.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So we don't want to get involved in this darkness. We don't want to get in it. We don't want to be involved in it. And I really feel like what I told people yesterday in this video regarding Israel was so powerful that I was crying and I had to stop the video because they showed me us. They said, you hold the joy for those people that are suffering. You don't get in the suffering with them. That doesn't help them. It's okay to be joyful. It's okay to sing. It's okay to celebrate because you're holding their joy for them. And when they're able to step into that, there it is. They'll join you in that joy. We have this messed up kind of codependent idea that if the world is suffering, I'm going to suffer. If my town is suffered, I got to suffer. I've got to do penance for all of it, right? Some kind of weird, very messed up thing. But it's very prevalent and it's making all of our lights dim.
And Yeshua talks about that. God doesn't want us to suffer. But he talks about him on the cross, and people concentrate on that and then think they need to suffer because he suffered. He talks about that. It's the same thing. He talks about that
in this book.
Yeah. So, and I want to tell people, which I think is really important. especially with all the tragedy that has happened in Israel. I had a lifetime where I was in a castle and they took over the castle, of course, and I was raped in the castle, but that's another story. And then they put me on this platform because I'm a visual, so I see it, right? I'm being burnt, okay? And so my soul is watching. My soul left.
Yeah, your soul doesn't stay in that. No.
No. And even though the body looked alive, my soul was gone.
Gone. And Jesus's soul was gone on the cross.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
They
people
say
that have
too.
Alzheimer's, their soul is gone. They're not going to stay in that body. Or you're in a coma. Your soul is like out visiting people and, having a homecoming. And if the physical body is going to make a recovery, the soul comes back in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think a near-death experiencer said that happened, whatever. So I was like, yeah, that's because that happened to me, because it was really weird, seeing yourself being burnt all up. It's like, nice. But it didn't affect me. I mean, it didn't. I didn't cry or anything. You know what I mean?
Well, you're not emotional because you're in
because you're a soul, and
you're a soul,
and that's the lifetime. It's gone. It's over. It's like. And that's why I tell people, this lifetime is just like a blink of an eye. And
it's a blink of an eye.
It goes fast. And
if you don't finish it this time, you can dial up 5 more. You can do this as many times as you like. You have unlimited passes.
You don't have to come back.
You don't have to, but you can.
I've had people say, this is my last lifetime. And I'm always kind of smile because you don't know.
Probably not.
No.
Yeah. So what is the difference between reading the Akashic records and what you do? Would you be able to answer that or no?
Okay, I take sometimes people to the Akashic records. The records is of everything that's ever been thought, done, or felt. So I think, well, Edgar Cayce talked about going there, right? So I think it's all there. It's not a library. I mean, we use symbols, okay?
Yes, because it makes sense to us.
Yeah. So we can access it anywhere. It's just like, it just happens. I don't know. I don't know everything, Susan. Sorry.
I don't know anything either. I just ask the questions. And that's why in the book, and I want to say this because it can be off-putting. In the book, he talks about the Father all the time, the Father. And then, but that's because these people talking to us in the book are in that timeline. They're experiencing it from the timeline of Jesus walking the earth. And that would have been how they would describe that kind of person, would be the Father or the Master, the teacher. But I think if Jesus were to appear today, he might say something different. He might use a different term to describe that. So just so that you guys know.
Well, also, you have to understand this is, and I say this in the book, this is their perspective at the time.
Yes.
Just like I thought Jesus died, even if Jesus didn't die on the cross that time, I felt he did, because that was my perspective at the time. And a lot of the other people, it's like they use words that we don't always use. Householder. Did you ever hear of that?
I've never heard that, but it's in the book. Yeah.
And then to get coin instead of money.
Yes.
And the one I like is they bring the wind with them. That was like an ET thing.
They bring the wind with them.
A spaceship.
So there is some ET stuff in here, you guys. So and Lemuria pops into here. There's other things in here. This is definitely not your mama's Jesus Bible rendition. Definitely not. So you'll have to, but what I like about what she does is she asks the same questions. And so if 3 people say the same thing, then you can start to believe that there's some veracity, there's some truth to that, right? Because they don't know each other. They're, you know what I mean? And they came to you. You didn't say, who thinks they knew Jesus in a past life? You just said, I do this work. And in the process of doing the work, you find that this person is saying that this person is magnetic. Everybody follows him. They talk about when Jesus looks at children, these people are crying. When they're talking about Jesus looking at children, they're crying. These are men crying because he looks at them with so much love, unconditional, unadulterated, pure love. And obviously the kids love him, right? So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting book.
Yeah. And he had, I think there's 3 of them that were children with him.
Yes.
They were childhood friends, and they all talk about playing with the stick and the ball.
Yes.
And they don't know each other. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So at different times, and they're different years too. Not everybody came at the same year or whatever. I have to say there are 2 people that did know each other, but didn't know that I was doing this,
Okay. Yeah.
But everybody else, they have no idea who that person was or whatever. That's why I wanted it all together, because they kind of go together, don't they?
No, they go together.
Yeah.
It's so easy to read because it's narrative. It's a narrative. And then you ask, and then they say, no, I'm at the temple. Oh, okay. What is your name? My name is this. Look at your feet. What are you wearing? I'm wearing sandals. So it's repetitive. You're asking similar questions throughout the whole book. And you get these people. It's fascinating, even from a historical perspective, right? Too.
Oh, yeah.
But you get, like you're saying, it goes together, and after a while, it all makes sense. Like you can even see the crowds following Jesus. And you can see how some of these people, especially kids, they all have chores, they have work, and they can't just leave their house. Like you said, you had your sheep. And some people really couldn't. They were like, well, I followed him as far as I could, but I had to go back. Right. Really, you could see these challenging, like I want to go, but I can't go because I have to take care of my family,
Yeah. But then I felt this need that I had to go at the end. I really had to be there.
And that's what happens. Some people are like, they left their parent. They didn't, there's no letters you write home. You just disappear.
Yeah. And so, but I felt so drawn to him. But they all say he had mesmerizing eyes. But I have to tell you this. When I had my past life regression with Jesus, he asked me what color his eyes were. Well, the conscious mind said they have to be brown, right? But I saw blue.
I saw blue. I just saw blue.
And I said brown, but I saw blue. But then the first client that came said his eyes were blue. So it confirmed. And then I've had a lot of other ones. And I think I asked someone, why does his eyes blue? And they said, because his family comes from the north. So I don't know what that meant, but I thought that was interesting. And some said like bluish purple, and one said it could change too. The eyes could change. I
would just say that his eyes were special. They were distinctive. They were very distinctive. And then obviously he had energy. He healed. Another thing he said was he couldn't heal everybody. This is a really important message that you guys need to hear, that he healed so many lepers like that, like right there in front of everybody. But a few lepers he couldn't heal. And people were like, why couldn't he heal them? And Jesus, the message was they didn't want to be healed.
That was their lesson.
That was their lesson.
Their experience.
They feel like they could be healed, right? So that's a hard thing for us to hear too, because as we go into, say 2050, we're going to be healing like that. And we're going to be really, that's going to be in our face. The fact that, what do you mean? I want to heal. Mm-hmm. What do you, I think even in the book, some people were upset that they weren't healed, so that's a complicated concept.
Yeah. But it makes sense because he would look inside them and heal the wound inside. And then some were not ready, just like some weren't ready to forgive the other person, like I told you. So, and I think the therapist said, well, why doesn't my father in that life get healed? Because he was bedridden. And I finally asked Yeshua, and he said it was his experience that he needed that. So, so sometimes people need that to experience what it's like to be bedridden, or what it's like to be crippled, or what it's like. but sometimes we don't,
And
if we're ready
also
to.
it affects you.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I'm doing readings, I can see sort of towards the end of someone's life that they're going to do a certain thing because they, like my own dad, I knew he was going to be bedridden, and I knew he was going to be bedridden because he needed to have an experience with my sister. It wasn't for me, it was for her. And I also knew that he would drag that on as long as he needed to so that she could have that experience. So there's this sense too of also being working. That's that soul contract thing too, right? Of playing a role for each other.
Right. Or sometimes they were very controlling in this life, so they lose control.
That's
maybe
true too.
Alzheimer's.
They lose control, right? They lose control, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have to know. And that's one thing about, you talked about you having patterns. So we, just like people in this life choose the wrong partner over and over again, well, that can continue. Even depression can be a pattern.
Yes, I can see.
And they're shown what happens at the end of their life, that they were miserable and this and whatever. So it's showing them, if you don't change that depression, then you're going to end up kind of this way. So it kind of shows them sometimes too. So that was interesting that depression can be carried on too. So
it's life-changing. So so for you, you practice in Baltimore? Where?
Well,
Baltimore?
I'm in Northern Maryland.
You're in Northern Maryland. And so any of my peeps that are up around that way, because the way you do your quantum healing hypnosis is in person. So if like I was like talking to her, I'm like, I need to get a reading. And she's like, you need to get a plane ticket. So I was like, okay, throw that gauntlet down. No problem.
Sorry.
But it's life-changing. These things are life-changing, you guys. Oftentimes we have this hidden, to us, it's hidden. The patterns are happening. Maybe we recognize them, but we don't know why, or we can't break them. Yeah. Like you said, like, hey, maybe you've had a string of bad relationships. And so your answer is to not be in a relationship. That is not the answer. I'm going to tell you right now, that is, you didn't do nothing. You didn't solve nothing, and you didn't get one over on the universe. Okay. All you did was delay that situation. The best thing to do is get some help. This is one of those tools I'm always talking about. You can get a quantum healing hypnosis and find out what is going on under the hood and fix it.
So the quantum healing, you don't have to go through 50 million past lives, because they can fast forward they can fast forward the past lives. And that's in the book, because sometimes I'll say, well, do they need to go to this lifetime, another lifetime with Jesus? I think the one guy did, and he went to that lifetime. So they go to the crux of the issue, where, past life, you actually experience it more in detail. Also any healing, it's very healing. You can heal anything, but you have to believe it. You have to believe it. You have to have faith, kind of, and no doubt,
Yep. Not even a little.
And that's hard for humans. Yeah, that's hard for humans sometimes.
It's hard. And that's the same thing with manifesting money. If you don't believe that you are going to have money, or that you're worthy of money, you're not going to get it. So it's all of this is the same. And it really is about what she's talking about with separation. We believe we're separated from God. We believe we're separated from all as one. And that's kind of what keeps us in those little cages. So you can do that self-love, and you can do your self-confidence, work on that, so that when you do get a reading like this, you're going to get more out of it.
Right. Yeah. And so, and some of the stuff that we deal with is this life too. I'm not saying everything, but sometimes it can carry over from past life to this life too. So, yeah. So,
it most certainly can.
Why we do certain things or say certain things, because people say things and you need to listen. Sometimes their higher self comes through. That happened to me with my mother, who said something that's totally not spiritual mother related, but she said it. And also I got confirmation of another past life. So with somebody that didn't know what they were saying. So just listen to that inner voice. I think that's what Yeshua was saying. Listen, and the kingdom is within. That always made sense to me, even as a child. And he said that, I believe he really said that. So.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it too. Absolutely. So we probably should wrap this up just because I think we've been going on for quite a while and I could talk to you all day. And what I would say is, do you have a website that people can check out?
Yes. It's willislifejourneys.com.
Willis, WILLIS, Life Journeys.
With the S.
Okay.
And then you can email me at, willislifejourneys@yahoo.com. So
at Yahoo. Okay.
I don't do Facebook that much.
That's okay. I don't either. That's okay.
I do it for my grandchildren, but
no, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine.
So I don't do the other things. I know people say you should, but I just don't. I think if people are supposed to come, because I've had people that you wouldn't believe came that from far away. So they'll come if they're supposed to see me or someone else. They'll go to them. That's fine. So I just don't worry about it anymore.
There you go. Don't worry about it.
Let it go. That's the best thing to do, is just let it go.
Surrender. We're back to surrender.
But you still have to do the work, You can't just say, here it is.
I surrendered. Now where's it all? What is happening? It's surrender so that you can get the guidance. That's why you're surrendering. And then when you get the guidance, you can start to take steps to, like she did. I mean, she did all the steps. They led her down this path one step at a time. They've led me down the path one step at a time. They put people in my life to tell me things, just like you're saying, that they didn't have any idea what they were saying. But I knew, because when you get a message like that, it has import. You're like, and you never forget it. Another weird thing is you never really forget it. It kind of stays with you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's always stayed with me, what I've gotten.
See?
So, and a lot of healers come, and and they have a lot of doubt. So, work on a lot of that. So if you feel you're a healer, go for it, really. If that's your calling. Or a psychic. A lot of people don't admit they're psychic.
They will not admit it. I can't get them to admit this is my soul path, is turning on light bulbs. I just, when I turn on the light bulbs, it's like you wind them up and then I just send them off. They go, do whatever it is they're doing. I have a woman that just finally realized that she is a fantastic Akashic Records reader. And she said, Susan, you're right. I didn't believe in myself, but you have to get there on your own.
Yeah.
I can lead a horse to water. I can't make him drink, but I sure can. And you can too. We can support you. We can tell you what we know and we can support you, but you have to take the step into that big unknown, just like I did. And just like Karen did. We're representing, we're leading by example. Neither one of us thought we would be doing this. No. So,
I never thought I'd be on YouTube, but a psychic told me I was. I'm like, oh no, I can't get on YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, people told me, I see you giving live events with hundreds of people. I literally had a friend that I would have to walk out of the room. Like I couldn't even be in the room after she said that. Like, I cannot answer you. I need to go now. Like that's how far I've come in 2 years. Right.
Well, that's good. It took me a little longer to do, I did group regressions for like 200 people one time, but I felt good because I know what I'm doing, number one, and I know it's helping people. Yeah. So
see, and that's the thing now is they want us to go to help more people, right? Like, they don't want me to necessarily, it's just using your abilities to the max, right? So many people need this. So that they have their ways of convincing me to do things. I just have to stop fighting them. I mean, that's why it only took 2 years. I mean, you don't know what happened before that. I finally just had to trust, and I had a big trust fall, like one of those things where you lean back and people catch you. This last weekend with the event, I let spirit do it. Spirit organized it. I literally just followed whatever they had me do. And for a Virgo, that's really hard because I wanted to get in there and micromanage it and do this and do that. And I just said, okay, let's do it. And it came out beautifully. So,
and we're so glad that you did. Yeah. Because
yeah.
you help so many people with your work.
And they help me, my God, that who's the teacher and who's the student, right?
I know. I've learned, I've learned so much from.
Yeah, it's a dynamic.
I'd say 5 years into this, 5 years as I was doing it, I wouldn't have believed that I would have had so many people from other planets. But now it's like, okay. And people come and go, you think this is weird. And I'm like, hey,
no.
No.
People do that to me. I'm like, no, honey, probably not. Yeah, I'm like,
and it's really not that weird most of the time. I'm like,
no, that's not even weird. You have to be really weird to.
And a lot of people don't know. Like Dolores Cannon wrote about the volunteers. They are here. They are coming, and more coming.
Read the book about the volunteers, and they're the ones coming to not save us, but they're the ones coming to help us. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and they have a mission because the earth is. I think more so than Jesus, maybe they're just sending them now, And
that's the same energy, right? That's what I was just talking about.
Yeah.
Jesus was one man. He can only do so much. So
now
instead, they split him into thousands of people and threw it at earth,
Yeah. And some of them don't know it, but they're awakening to it. Or they download information, in the session sometimes. And when they're ready for the information will come to them. So do you get that sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I could be working with a client like you for a while, for 2 years, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's like, oh, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process. But how you speed the process up is loving yourself, being gentle and kind to yourself, forgiving, forgiving yourself. I think a lot of times when you have terrible childhoods, you actually blame yourself. So there's actually a lot of shame and blame that you give yourself as a child. So I think there's also a lot of self-forgiveness that needs to happen. And doing that kind of work is how I did my awakening. That's how I got here. That's how I started talking to my guides.
Did you know as a child? Because I kind of knew they were like, who are these people?
Yeah. I saw everything, all kinds of things.
And I'm like, I just knew that something was off there. Something's not right here. Yeah. So, but some people say they just thought it was normal after a while. So I said, no, I never thought it was normal.
No, I never thought it was normal.
Yeah. But I guess that's because we have ability to kind of go inside and see. But, yeah. And also I couldn't speak my truth as a child.
No.
So I listened, but that helps me with my work, right? Listening.
Yeah. You're good at listening. And there's a reason I think healers have kind of tough childhoods, because we've earned our stripes. I can be compassionate because I have been through those things.
Right.
I think if you haven't been through those things, sometimes it's hard to imagine. And I haven't been through everything, right? I haven't been through a lot of things my clients have been through, but I have compassion because I learned to have compassion for myself and compassion for what I went through. Now I can have compassion for them.
Yeah. And I think that's why we did that. Yeah, I think so. And that's why, it's like a person that works with people, drug addiction or alcoholism, they're the best teachers because they're the best
teachers.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're the best ones to help the others heal from that. So that's why we choose a lot of times in difficult situations, to have compassion for people that have been through that situation.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think so.
We can walk in their shoes, so to speak,
Yeah.
Well, Thank you so much, Karen. I really could talk to you for hours and hours, truly. Maybe we can do this again sometime.
Okay, sure. I'd love to. And thank you for inviting me. And thank you for your work, Jeff.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. From one healer to another, high five each other. And let's see where the future takes us. Because I think, I could talk to you off recording, but you've got some interesting things coming. You thought a book was like, if you thought this was the pinnacle, if you thought, I'm done, You were wrong. They've got more plans for you, girlfriend. It's all good. It's nothing you can't handle. And
they told me
you are the
another
right
book.
person at the right time. I am the right person at the right time. All of us chose to be here at this time, which bears some ruminating over, doesn't it? I mean, don't you just want to know why am I here at this time? What is my role here? And this is all things you can kind of go within and kind of discern, or you can work with someone like Karen and get the straight story pretty quickly.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
You. I'll see you. Thank you very
all
much.
so much.
Blessings.
We will hopefully do this again. All right, everybody. Take care.